Hello everyone and welcome back. Got my book, so shall we? How does a religious experience feel? Persons report a religious experience to be more like a presence of God rather than knowledge about God. Perhaps it's truly ineffable and its only objective validation may be the change it may affect in a person's life. This change is seen in people who may affect in a person's life. This change is seen in people who are able to remove the not okay from positions they have held about themselves and others. Deciding on the position I'm okay, you're okay has been reported as a conversion experience. The following description by Tillich in The New Being, his book is called The New Being, seems to come close to how the religious experience feels. He begins by asking, do you know what it means to be struck by grace? I'd like to paraphrase, do you know what it means to experience I'm okay, you're okay? In the answer he says, does not mean that we suddenly believe that God exists or that Jesus is the Saviour, or that the Bible contains the truth. To believe that something is almost contrary to the meaning of grace. Furthermore, grace does not mean simply that we are making progress in our moral self-control, in our fight against society. Moral progress may be a fruit of grace, but it is not grace itself, and it can even prevent us from receiving grace, and certainly does not happen, so long as we think in our self-complacency that we have no need of it. Grace strikes us when we are in great pain and relentlessness. It strikes us when we walk through the dark alley of a meaningless and empty life. It strikes us when we feel our separation is deeper than usual, because we violated another life. It strikes us when our disgust for our own being, our indifference, our weakness, our hostility, and our lack of direction and composure have become intolerable to us. It strikes us when year after year the longed for perfection of life does not appear. When the old compulsions reign within us, as they have for decades. When despair destroys all joy and courage. Sometimes at that moment, a ray of light breaks into our darkness, and it is as though a voice were saying, you are accepted by that which is great in you, and the name of which you do not know. Do not ask for the name now, perhaps you'll find it later. Do not try to do anything now, perhaps later you will do much. Do not seek for anything, do not perform anything, do not intend anything. Simply accept the fact that you are accepted. If that happens to us, we experience grace. After such an experience, we may not be better than before. We may not believe more than before, but everything is transformed. In that moment, grace conquers sin, and reconciliation bridges the gulf of estrangement. And nothing is demanded of this experience, no religious or moral or intellectual presuppositions, nothing but acceptance. In the light of this grace, we perceive the power of grace in our relation to others and to ourselves. We experience the grace of being able to look frankly into the eyes of another, the miraculous grace of reunion of life with life. This is intimacy. This is awareness. Burns says in Games People Play, awareness means the capacity to see a coffee pot and hear the birds sing in one's own way, and not the way one was taught. Tillich speaks of experiencing God or grace in his own way, and not in the way he has been taught. Every pre-programmed idea of what God is gets in the way of experiencing God. That is why I contend that an important aspect of religious experience of intimacy is the exclusion of the parent. Are you with me so far, people? Because, as always, I am not going back, okay? Burns says, again, that is in Games People Play, a little boy sees and hears birds with delight. Then the good father comes along and feels he should share the experience and help his son develop. He says, that's a jay, and this is a sparrow. The moment the little boy is concerned with which is a jay and which is a sparrow, he can no longer see the birds or hear them sing. He has to see and hear them the way his father wants him to. Father has good reasons on his side, since few people can afford to go through life listening to the birds sing. And the sooner the little boy starts his education, the better. A few people, however, can still see and hear in the old way, but most of the members of the human race have lost the capacity, and are not left the option of seeing and hearing directly, even if they can afford to. They must get it second hand. Now, we know what's happening here. The boys enjoyed the birds. The dad thinks it's nice, but at the same time, the dad also feels that the world is not kind, so he has to learn, you know? As I've learned with a lot of people want to give more love to the ones they love, especially when it comes to their children. They want to give them more love, you know? They want them to experience more happiness and freedom, but there's always that voice inside of you, which really would be the parent in this case, saying that you can't do that because the world is tough. You know, you've got to harden your child up for the world. You've got to give him knowledge. You've got to give him strength so that he can survive. Which, admittedly, the world is tough. But, it's like I've always said, if I ever had kids, I would operate on the basis of the world is tough and you need to be tough for it, but home is a safe space to be yourself, you know? Sometimes you can just stop and listen to the birds sing without worrying about which bird is which. I mean, where I come from, you see quite a few birds actually. You see a lot of seagulls, you see pigeons, you see doves, you even see a few robins lately as well, which is quite nice. Seems to be more birds about now than there was before. Not sure why that is, but I'm sure there's a reason. But yeah, if you are a person, then chances are you experience what that young boy experienced. You're listening to the birds and your dad suddenly felt the need to give you knowledge to prepare you for the world outside. Of course, listening to the birds and being told about it is just a metaphor for generally the toughening up of children, preparing them for the outside world. Well intentioned, but can sometimes have consequences. But then again, as I would say, future generations are talking about this, they're thinking about it, and they're trying out new ways with their children. As I'm sure some of you listening probably experience some of those new ways of being taught things, or just being raised in general. Of course, I don't have any children, and I probably never will, so I don't think I've really experienced this. Back to the book. That is why theology or religion may stand in the way of religious experience. It is hard to experience ecstasy if my mind is occupied with an effeminate painting of Jesus, angels with hard-to-believe wings, the serpent in the Garden of Eden, predestination, or the final points of purgatory. Intimacy is an experience of the natural child, a child who heard the birds sing in his own way. Usually, Burns says, the adaptation to parental influences is what spoils it, and most unfortunately, this is almost a universal occurrence. The adaptation begins at birth, Jesus said. Except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. The rebirth of which Jesus speaks is, I believe, the rebirth of the natural child. This is possible after the adult comprehends the not okay, which was produced by the adaptive or civilizing process. When we turn off the parent, there is even the possibility of intimacy with our parents. They suffered from the adaptive process too. Now, that is actually true. Now, people mostly, until very recently, always done what the previous generation did. They were raised one way and they in turn done the same, because a lot of people always end up dotting the edge of, I done okay, so it's fine to do. And I'm not going to judge anyone's parenting style, by the way. And I'm not going to judge anyone's parents who are watching this video, because it's not for me to do. But sometimes it's just good to stop and think, do I really want to do everything the exact same way? So if you do have children, just stop for a moment and think, am I going to do things the exact way my dad did, or am I going to forge my own path with parenthood, to say? It's worth thinking about, people. It really is. People in perspective. One of the most helpful ways to strengthen the adult for the task of examining parent data, which data can be extremely overpowering to the child, particularly on the subject of religion, is to stand back for greater perspective, the broader view. I gained a helpful broader view from a calendar of the evolution of man, which was written by Robert T. Francoeur. Arbitrarily, for the exact date of man's appearance will never be known. Let us estimate that appearance at about 1.5 million years ago. Then let us propose a comparison of mankind's history with a calendar year in which one day equals 4,000 years of human history. In this scene, January 1st would witness the appearance of Homo habilis ancestors. Homo habilis could walk erect and use the most primitive tools, hunting in bands. He could probably not talk as we do, though he undoubtedly has some method of communication. Speech as we know it today evolved very gradually during the first few months of our year. Man's evolutionary greatness was at best tedious and halting. Fire first for protection from the cold and wild animals, only much later for cooking. Tools chipped from stone, the skills of hunting, the slow concentration, and involutions of the cerebral cortex. Summer came and went, and the fall was 2/3 through its course when Neanderthal man finally appeared around November 1st. The first indications of a religious belief can be seen in the burial sites of the later Neanderthals around December 17th in our scheme. Are you with me so far, people? What's that like? Got a dog with me now. Not sure what he thinks of the book, but seems to like me. You see my arm doing things, it's me making a fuss of him while I'm reading. I'm surprised I can do both at the same time, actually. Now, where was I? Ah, yes, here I was. By December 24th of our hypothetical year, all the non-sapiens or primitive forms of man had died out or been absorbed by the more progressive and modern Cro-Magnon man. Agriculture began around December 28th, and the whole of our historical era, the brief 6,000 to 10,000 years for which we have records, is nestled in the last 2 days of our year. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle were born about 9 a.m. on December 31st, Christ at noon, and Columbus about 9:30 p.m. Just a reminder, people, that Columbus was a massive. So, just read up on him, okay? And don't venerate the man. There were people in America long before him, and I don't mean the natives either. All the Vikings who arrived at Finland. There were people in America long before he was. Just remember that, people. So he really was nothing special. The final hour of December 31st, from 11 p.m. to midnight New Year's Eve, embraces all of the 19th and 20th centuries. In this perspective, we recognise rather clearly that our particular brand of old-time religion, with its claims of ultimate and exclusive knowledge about God's creation, is not so old after all. Faith, true blood says, it's not a blind leap into nothing but a thoughtful walk into the light we have. Part of that light is the recognition that the world which God so loved is considerably larger than our own personal comprehension of it. Nothing else, this recognition should make us modest and rule out our claims to exclusive truth. You know, I really can't believe there is actually someone called True Blood. It sounds like a name a character would have in a show or a film when the writer wishes to convey something about who they are. You know, it's like the writer said, you know what, this bloke's really good at hunting vampires, so he's True Blood. And he's pure-blooded and all that other nonsense. Back to the book. Maybe less of my thoughts as the thing carries on, or there may be more. The truth is, I don't know myself, so you won't either. I'm reminded of one politician's statement. When white and black and brown and every other colour decide to go and to live together as Christians, then and only again are we going to see an end to these troubles. That's funny. That's funny. Well-meaning, but naive, I think. That statement may mean something, but what does it mean to the 1.5 billion persons in the world who don't know who Christ was and never heard his name? This brings us to a second way in which we can look at people in perspective. In a sermon I heard some time ago, the following statistics were presented. If the 3 billion people of the world, bear in mind we're 8 billion now, or something close to that, I think. Let's go back. If the 3 billion people of the world could be represented in a community of 100, 6 would be United States citizens. 94 would be citizens of other countries. 6 would own one half the money in the world. 94 would share the other half. Of the 94, 20 would own virtually all of the remaining half. 6 would have 15 times more material possessions than the other 94% put together. 94 people put together. 6 have 72% more than the average daily food requirement. 2/3 of the 94 would have below minimum food standards, and many of them would be on a starvation diet. The lifespan of 6 would be 70 years. The lifespan of 94 would be 39 years. Of the 94, 33 would come from countries where the Christian faith is taught. Of the 33, 24 would be Catholic and 9 would be Protestant. Less than 1/2 of the 94 would have feared the name of Christ, but the majority of the 94 would know of Lenin. I know of Lenin, so I am technically one of the 94. I know who Lenin was. Didn't know him personally because he was dead before I was born, but I know who he was. I think. Well, I know what I've read about him anyway. Could have been completely different in person. Not that really matters because we'll never know. Among the 94, there will be 3 communist documents which outsell the Bible. Okay. By the year 2000, 1 out of every 2 persons will be Chinese. Not quite, no. We're not at that stage yet. There's 8 billion people and China has I think it's 1.3 billion. There's 1.6 billion people in India now, I believe. This could be wrong, but I'm pretty certain that's correct. I'm pretty certain India has more people than China now. So I think that's a bit of red fear going into that little bit. Sorry, red peril they called it, didn't they? When people were worried that every person in the world would suddenly be Chinese just by default. We are deluded if we continue to make sweeping statements about God and about man without continually keeping before us the facts of life. The long history of the development of man and the present-day diversity of human thought. This may be frightening data to some people, hopeless they may cry, or rather like Tyler's view. When asked once what made him happy, he said, "I'm happy because the world is round." The borders, corners or angles not physical but psychological. If we remove these psychological fences erected to protect the not okay child existence in every person, there are no barriers to prevent our living together in peace. Also, I shared a hopeful view of Mr. Hirschberger, the druggist in Adela Rogers St. John's Tell No Man. Something's up, young Hank. Something's abroad. We're stirring in our long sleep. Something fast and new as when Moses came down from the mountain. Evolution is conversion. The glory of man is beginning to force up a little green shoot through all the crap and crud of what is called reality. And that, people, brings us to the end of today's video. Now, I hope you learned something, and I hope that my interacting with views didn't annoy you too much. But if it did, tough luck, because I'm not going to stop. Think of me as views like the dream scenes used to get in The Sopranos. The more people complain about them, the more you got. So, if you want more of me bringing my views in, then complain about them. So I'll do it more, just to spite you, or to please you. You could be using reverse psychology, I'll never know. But either way, just want you all to know now that I love each and every single one of you. Even the ones who leave negative comments on my videos. Although there aren't many of you actually existing. Which is good in a way. Anyway, hope you all take care of yourselves, people. And remember, stay hydrated, okay? Bye.